Good evening, everybody. It is Tuesday, January 27th. Feels like 45th to me, 2026. It is really kind of some got to check the date sometimes. It's been a long stretch here, and boy, we are talking cold here on Live Weather Impact tonight. If you were out at all last night or early this morning, this was the coldest morning we've seen in quite some time. Now, weird enough, the airport was 14. It was kind of a weird temperature because so many other areas were so much colder, including my house. My weather station in my house, which I've had installed since 2018, this was the second coldest morning I've had since 2018. And only one close was at Christmas 2022. I had 10.8 degrees this morning. I think it was pretty close to that 10.9, or it was right around that same temperature. But we were 9 in Charlotte back on that date. Today we were 14. But look at some of these other temperatures. A lot of single digits this morning. We also stayed below freezing for about 19 or 20 hours, which was pretty long, and that's created a lot of issues with ice on ponds and water pipe issues, and I think this is going to be a recurring theme we're going to see through the weekend. Right now, temperatures, sun has gone down, but we're still barely above freezing in a few spots. We should be below freezing here shortly, and it will be cold again tonight. I think how cold will depend on these high clouds trying to stream in from the west. The thing about cloud cover this time of year and this setup, keeps you a little bit warmer at night, but keeps you a lot cooler during the day. So it's a rough trade-off. You want to kind of see the clouds at night, but not during the day. There's another surge of Arctic air on the way. Now, as you probably have heard already, everybody is either on delay or remote learning tomorrow or closed. A lot of schools, mainly for black ice overnight because temperatures will be back below freezing. I don't think there's as much black ice today as there was yesterday, mainly because we didn't melt a lot today. It was a lot colder. But the spots that didn't thaw yesterday certainly are still frozen this evening, and that is primarily in parking lots, sidewalks, driveways, the shaded spots. Those are the ones we see the ice. The roads, to be honest with you, I think are in pretty good shape. Now, up towards Tim's area, I did notice some roads up there were horrible. Shaded spots never really thawed out. Tomorrow, I do expect a warmer day, so we're certainly going to melt things more tomorrow because the combination of sun, wind, clouds, and temperatures in the 40s, that will certainly melt things. In the next couple of afternoons, while I wouldn't call this toasty, it's certainly a little bit warmer, temperatures in the 40s, not the 30s, but that's still way below our average high of the lower 50s. This jet stream pattern is an amazing pattern for cold temperatures because all along the East Coast, wave after wave of cold air is coming down. The next push of cold air and vorticity, we call it, it's actually a little spin in the atmosphere, arrives Saturday into Sunday. And this is such a potent little vorticity maximum that it helps kick off a new storm that's going to develop somewhere on the coast, a good old-fashioned winter storm nor'easter. This is a classic setup. The storm we saw this past weekend was a mess with freezing rain, drizzle, sleet, a lot of ice, no snow. Even the snow we did see was kind of weird snow. This is a more classic all snow or nothing setup. There's no mixture in this one. So pretty easy from a precipitation type. It's a yes or no kind of question instead of yes, no, maybe this, yes, no, maybe that. This is definitely going to be a little bit easier to forecast as far as the type. The question is the track, and this I think is more about amounts, not whether it's going to snow or not. I do think we're going to see snow, and I'll tell you why. It's not so much because of these scenarios, the tracks. It's more so because of the disturbance, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. This is what we call vorticity. We call it mid-level energy just to simplify it, but this is at the 500 millibar level, which if you're tracking, that's about, depending on the time of year, about 15,000 feet above our heads. This little vorticity comes down. The reason I think we'll see snow is even before the low pressure forms, which I'm going to stop this and I'm going to grab my cursor so I can point to it. So the low is going to form right here. That's the low, but this is the vorticity. It passes over us Saturday morning, and it could be strong enough just by itself to give us some snow, some really fluffy, light stuff before the low even forms. Then when the low forms, depending on where, that will tell us if we're going to see more snow, whether it'll be more substantial, more of a big deal, less of a big deal. But any way you slice it, behind it, this is the strongest surge of cold air so far, colder than even today and yesterday. So when we look at the winter weather chances, this is from the Weather Prediction Center. The 10 to 30% chance of wintry weather means the chance of seeing 2 to 3 inches of snow or sleet. And right now, we're definitely on the low side of that, but it's a 10 to 30% chance. To the east, you see that 30 to 50% chance, which is way higher, obviously. But when you look at moderate impacts, not totals, you look at the impact this will have on your daily life. I love this product because it kind of shows you, I'm going to pause it right here, the chance for those moderate impacts, which means disruption to travel more than anything. So bad roads. 70 to 80% east of I-95. You go west, those percentages drop off, but they're still somewhat significant around Charlotte, maybe 40-ish%. To me, once you get about 50%, that's where you're going to pay attention this far out. So it's right on that threshold, like, yeah, we probably should be paying attention to this pretty closely right now. And because of the vorticity and I think the legitimate chance of seeing some snow, I'm actually going to show you that I have us at a 3 right now on the snow meter, because I do think there's a legit chance that we could see some snow. And I'll show you what I mean. This is a great example. This is our weekend nor'easter forecast from the European. You'll see that disturbance coming down right here. I'm going to pause this Friday night, Saturday morning, right there. Just a little bit of snow, but then the low cranks up and bigger snow forms to our east. So right there, as the disturbance pivots through, you see a little bit of snow. So that's why somewhat confident we're going to see something out of this. It's just a question of how much of something. So a quick look at your Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. The one common theme here, cold. It is going to stay cold. In fact, it's going to get even colder as we go into next week. And we might need to be weather impact alert, not for the snow, but for the cold. We'll discuss this with Tim Buckley because he's going to deal with the same thing. We'll talk about the winter potential and the cold air coming up in 2 minutes. Stick around right here on Live Weather Impact. All right, welcome back, everybody. Tim Buckley joins me from WFMY, and Tim, everybody's kind of in the deep freeze today. That was a cold morning this morning. It was weird. Charlotte Douglas only got to 14, but at my house, I said in our local segment, I moved into a new house in 2018, same neighborhood, but different house. And when I put my Tempest weather station up, the coldest I had ever been was 10.4 or something like that, back on December Christmas 2022, and this morning I was 10.8, so it was almost as cold as I was back then. So I think a lot of people were probably as cold as that Christmas cold snap, which in Charlotte we were 9, even though the airport was 14 this time. It seemed very similar, at least in the outlying areas.
Yeah, it was a cold snap for sure. I mean, we got down to about 8 around here. It was interesting to see who was around 10 or 12 and who got down in the single digits. A little bit of randomness to that this morning on the map. But either way, really cold stuff. There were some pipe problems for some people. And, just because last night was the coldest, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you were fine last night, that you're good to go for the rest of the week. Probably a smart idea to kind of keep those preps going to keep those pipes flowing through the rest of the week.
In some of our cold snaps, I feel like the worst pipe issues are at the end of the event, like when things start to warm back up. And you'll hear that from plumbers. That sometimes the warm-up is what causes issues at the end. Surprisingly, in Charlotte, we have a pretty old water system, some of the older pipes, and Charlotte Water was pretty transparent. They said, some of our older pipes aren't as deep as some of our newer pipes because back then they just didn't bury them as far, and so they're having some issues with some of the shallower pipes. And you want to talk about an ice sculpture. Some of these water main breaks in this type of weather create all kinds of crazy ice all over the place. I mean, look at that, water's steaming there. It's so cold, and it was icing up, and so it causes all kinds of issues. So I think you're right, Tim. I think we're going to see problems throughout this week and into the weekend because every day, even though you're getting to like 38 or 40, you're spending like the majority of the 24-hour period at or below the freezing mark, and that's really what's causing a lot of the problems.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the stats, and we'll probably talk about this more, I don't know, maybe next week or something. But here in Greensboro, we've been below 20 for 4 mornings in a row.
Wow.
And I have us below 20 every day in the 7-day forecast. So if that holds, tonight might be the closest call because we're right about 19 or 20. It's going to be close. But if we keep that going, our all-time record is 12 days in a row below 20. We could be at 11. So this is something that's not super common to kind of stay this cold for so long. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm looking at our stats. The number 2 on our list is 10 days in a row. And that was when I lost my water pipe to the meter. So, I remember that one. And I didn't remember this one.
Well, you remember number 4 as well.
Yeah, that was a pretty cold and snowy winter as well. So, but the longest is 11 for us back in 1893. You remember that, James? We should ask Larry if he remembers that.
I'm going to tell him you said that.
No, I don't even think Larry remembers that one.
No.
That's so long ago. But 2 of those stick out, and I remember the second one more so because it did impact me. I lost the water line from my house to the meter, and so I remember that one very clearly. And I had a really good question about that today, Tim. Someone asked me, like, does dripping your pipes help that part of your line? Because you think, well, that's outside my house. How do I keep that from breaking? But if you think about it, if you're dripping, you're still moving water through that line, and that's the key. I had another great question, Tim, and I think I answered this correctly, but I probably would talk to a plumber. People say, we tell people to drip, but we don't tell them when to stop. And I said, that's
true.
That's a good point. And I said, me personally, at least what I would feel like, I feel like during the day I wouldn't drip as much as at night because if you think during the day when you're up, you're flushing toilets, you're using the sink, you're showering, you're moving that water. But at night when you sleep, unlike me, if you sleep for 8 hours or more, that water's not moving for 8 hours at night. So it's probably better to drip at night than during the day. Wouldn't you think so?
I would think so too, and whatever pipes that might be vulnerable or might be exposed, they're bound to be colder at the cold time of day. But really that coldest time of the day, it's really kind of centered around sunrise a little bit. So maybe when you go to bed you want to start the drip and maybe leave it going until around 9-10 o'clock or something might be the best option, I guess.
Kind of makes sense. And the other thing we're dealing with, and James just brought this up, and I kind of thought about this because in my neighborhood we have a pond. This time of year, we're not used to this in the Carolinas, but when we get prolonged cold snaps, Tim, we start seeing ice form on areas, ponds, lakes, and waterways. And it's a natural curiosity, especially for kids. I'm not going to lie, when I was a kid growing up in Ohio, we loved seeing the frozen ponds and lakes. Normally we were trying to play hockey on them, but they were thick enough. Here they don't get thick enough, Tim, even when it's cold like this. And I always worry about this. We just had a story out of Cabarrus County, a rescue, somebody fell through ice on a pond in Cabarrus County. It was a grown man, wasn't it?
I believe so.
So somebody thought, yeah, I'm going to go test this out. And so it's a good idea just to tell your kids, hey, it's a natural curiosity to go check these ponds out and like maybe step on them, but don't. The other thing is your pet. Your dog probably doesn't even know what he's running onto, or she, and could fall through the ice. So I don't know if you guys have seen this issue up your way, but
Sure.
I think this could be a problem that would be going on through the weekend.
Yeah, and probably into next week too. And it's especially a problem. I think back to last year, we had a couple smaller snow events, but they focused around the really, really cold stuff. And we had some of those frozen pond. We had a couple of sledding accidents where the kids went into the water, and these were really tragic. There were a couple that didn't make it. I mean, this is like fatal stuff that can happen. And so really, that kind of brought it to people's attention in a big way. And so it kind of is important to really mention this. I was glad that you mentioned this today. And it's not going to be a short-term thing. My pond's frozen back in our neighborhood as well.
Yeah.
And I think this will linger until this cold snap stops. And, if we'll talk more about this eventually, if we were to get snow this weekend, it makes it even less obvious where those ponds are. So if you're going sledding or something like that, you don't really know until it might be too late. So let's extra kind of sound the alarm on that a little bit, I think is a good idea.
Yeah, I think it's a good reminder. Now, Tim, we talked about yesterday the storm that impacted us. We missed the crippling ice storm here. We still had ice. We had sleet. We had snow. But, boy, the folks in central Tennessee, they got absolutely clobbered. And it's even colder over there. I can imagine. They have several 100,000 people without power in single-digit temperatures. Some of these cases, it wasn't out of the teens during the day. We've got a report from the Weather Channel about some of the crazy damage that is going on in central Tennessee right now.
The power situation continues in the Nashville metro, continuing to deal with a lot of folks still without power, although they are making progress here on this Tuesday. This is day 3 for many to be without the power. It's been a long time because all of the ice weighing down on the trees, coming down to the power poles, like you can see behind me. Not just the trees on power poles, but also trees coming down on vehicles. Oh, what a messy situation that we have in place here. So it's going to take cleaning up all of this mess before we can get the power restored to many areas. So that's going to take some time. Folks have been without power for days, and for some it could be a few more days before things are fully restored here in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm meteorologist Alex Wallace, the Weather Channel.
Yeah, Tim, we definitely got lucky here, but somebody got clobbered, and it was a pretty big metro area. We saw a lot of reports today, some of the power crews saying that could be weeks in some areas where there's so much damage they have to get through, and the crews are fighting ice still because it's not like things are thawing out there, so it's tough for the power crews. The mayor, I believe, of Nashville talked about this and how much destruction there actually is, and that it's not going to be a quick turnaround for them.
And it was
Nashville, unfortunately, was in the uniquely bad situation of having more ice coverage than just about any other part of the country. And so that has meant ice on power lines, ice on utility poles, ice on just about every tree in the city. And so there is a lot of structural damage. We've already had a few scenarios where lines have been restored on one stretch of a roadway, and just around the block, another line will come down as a new branch falls.
And just, that was exactly the concern that we had for here, is that if you did get that much ice, you would have that much damage, and then you would be left with the temperatures we're dealing with right now.
Yeah.
And the temperature in your house is going to drop to 50, 40, whatever. That's what those people are dealing with. And so it's super sad to see, and just kind of reminds us of how fortunate we got.
Yeah, we got really lucky. And, this was a big snowstorm to our north. Some record snowfall. I saw Columbus, Philadelphia, a couple other places had daily snowfall records. One spot that got good snow was New York, and everyone thinks Jim Cantore was here. I feel like, Tim, every storm, everyone has a picture of Jim Cantore in their town. He can't be all places at all times, but he was in New York, and he files a report about what they saw up there.
Long after the beautiful snow has fallen here in the tri-state area, we are in the deep freeze, and we are here to stay. We could even get colder this weekend, maybe below zero on Saturday morning for New York City, which is really cold. That does not happen that often. But the bigger problem is because of the salt and the melting and the refreezing, check this out, streets like this, a lot of these cars just kind of plowed in here with this cakey, heavy snow. Some have dug their way out, some will have to continue to dig their way out, but this is kind of a problem that we see up and down some of these streets and through here. So thank goodness. Imagine where we would be if we did not have work from home days. All right, imagine where we would be if we did not have work from home days. So some people say, hey, I can't get my car out, I can't dig it out. They can still do their work on their computer. Either way, as I mentioned, the big story here is the cold. We will stay in that cold as we work our way through the next 7 days at least, and that's a problem. All right, especially for folks that are trying to get their car out. We're watching a storm that'll be off the East Coast this weekend. Will it or won't it affect this area? Nobody can tell at this point. It's still way too early in the game, but we're watching it. Reporting from Long Island City, I am meteorologist Jim Cantori.
And Jim took the words right out of our mouth. We're doing the same thing, Tim.
Yeah.
I think that's the big question. The things I always, the past weekend aside, people criticize us. We talked about that already. But I think what's always interesting, people are like, well, you don't know. I said, well, there's actually some things I do know about this weekend storm. One, we know it's not going to be ice. We know it's not going to be sleet.
Right.
We know it's not going to be rain.
Yes.
It's going to be snow or nothing. So there are some knowns, right? We're just unsure of the track and the amounts of snow. Tim, I'm kind of leaning towards we're going to see something like maybe flurries at a minimum. And the reason I think that, and James, bring up my graphic here, the vorticity that's coming down, Tim, that's going to spur this low pressure on the coast, I think the vorticity by itself would be enough to squeeze out some snow showers or flurries on Saturday, even if the low pressure doesn't provide us any snow. So I think that's how cold and dynamic this storm could be, that it could end up producing snow even without the low because of that vorticity coming over. But the thing we don't know, Tim, is the exact track. So today I was looking at some of the impact graphics that the Weather Prediction Center puts out, and I think it kind of lays it out pretty good. It shows the area that probably has the best chance of seeing more significant snow, and as you go back to the west, the chances drop off. Doesn't mean we won't see any, it just probably means the impacts are lower overall. So there are some knowns, Tim. I always like to tell people I'm a big fan of telling you what we know, but also what we don't know. And we don't know a few things, but it's not everything, right?
Somebody was getting on me because I said there was about a 50% chance of staying dry and a 50% chance of getting snow. And like, well, that's just 50-50. That's all the time. I was like, no, it isn't.
No, it's not.
Most days in the
most days it's
most
zero.
days in the winter, the chance. Exactly right. Most days the chance of snow throughout the whole year is zero. That's a pretty darn high chance. So. Yeah. I agree with you. I think we have a decent signal here. It's just trying to fine tune those details. And we know, being where we are, I guess it's about 4 days away. There's always going to be a curveball. There's always going to be a surprise. But the flavor is pretty decent snow chance in the Carolinas. Yeah. And if you get it, it would probably be pretty dry and fluffy.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times we kind of poo-poo those maps that show a 10-to-1 snowfall ratio. Well, this time that might not actually be high enough.
Yeah.
So there's some reason to be excited, I think, if you're a snow lover. But the challenge is always to keep your emotions in check and try and take the emotion out of it a little bit, because you don't want to get too high or low with these things, because they can pull the rug out from under you, and maybe you don't cash in as much as you'd like. So we'll see.
It's so true. I think the emotion thing is what clouds people's judgment on these things. I always like to equate it to, like, how sometimes you feel like right now, I don't know what day of the week it is. It feels like a different day. But you look at the calendar and I have to go, oh, it's Tuesday. Well, a lot of times when it comes to snow, people don't look at the facts. They just go with that feeling. I feel like it's a different day, so I'm going to stick with that instead of reality. So it's probably better to come back to what is actually going to happen versus what you think or want or feel is going to happen. But I do think, Tim, with that powdery snow, which we talked about, I think the ratio that I saw, the average is like 14-to-1, which is pretty high for us, maybe 15-to-1.
Yeah.
That powdery snow, as well as the fact that it's so cold and the ground is so cold, this could be one of those where we have a little bit of snow, like an inch or less, but a high impact on the roads. So that is something to keep in mind this weekend.
Well, whatever falls would stick. There's no doubt about that. It definitely would stick. It also might be, though, if you're thinking about from like a clear the driveway sense, it might be a leaf blower snow.
Yes.
Right? Because it's not
Southern
super
snowblower.
heavy. That didn't work this weekend. I put in a lot of sweat to get the sleet off of my driveway. I had about 2 inches of sleet there.
Yeah.
And so the leaf blower doesn't work on that. But whatever we get this weekend, it probably would be pretty light in character. You could get a lot of snow. Like the ceiling on this event is pretty high, but it would be light in character, I would say.
Yeah.
So we'll see. It might be fun for some people if you're able to cash in. You might be able to do some sledding or some snowmen for a change.
Yeah, and what is the deal with the weekends? I mean, this is like the third weekend in a row with at least the chance of wintry weather. I kind of joked, is this
really
going to be
is.
the new March 1960 where every weekend we talk about something? Instead of Wednesday, it's on
At least
the
that
weekend.
time it went. I would prefer Wednesday. I think
Yeah,
Wednesday
me too.
sounds terrific. And I only need, when it's a Wednesday storm, I only got to talk about it on Monday and Tuesday. It's just like, get to the final answer. But boy, oh boy, we get to talk about it for 6 days and then work the whole weekend and then come back. So we love what we do, but it is a lot of talking.
Yeah, and that's true. And, the weekend, I do think from an impact standpoint, it is beneficial. That's obviously no school on Saturday. There's been not much school this week, but a lot less people work on the weekends. There are people that work like us, and there's a lot of other people, but it tends to have a little bit less of an impact because just there's not as many people on the roads that we normally have Monday through Friday. So there's always that kind of added benefit on the weekend. But a lot of people have plans. I mean, people postpone plans from last weekend to this weekend, and now it's like, am I going to have to postpone again? So I think Tim, we were kind of a mutual agreement. This is certainly something that could be something to keep an eye on. And the good news with this, I actually enjoyed probably forecasting this more if it wasn't for this past weekend, is this is a pure snowstorm. This is a classic Carolina snow setup. It's not the crazy stuff we were dealing with last weekend.
Been a while since we had a Miller A. They're hard to get. The coastal tracks are hard to get, and they can be more fun. So we'll see. They're trying to race in Winston on Sunday night. We'll see what happens with that as well.
Yeah, we should also say on the coast, this could have a lot of wind, so think almost near blizzard conditions if this thing cranks up. Of course, we've got a couple more days to talk about it. We'll do that tomorrow, but stick around. We've got more news coming up on The Plus.